Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, March 6th, 2017. Start of a brand new week of utter insanity. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. If my voice sounds a little bit different, it's because I got a brand new headset today. And after the show, I'm going to be going out and getting a replacement mixer. So we're updating our equipment here to make sure that we're getting the best possible show out there for you to listen to. And right now, Sam is in our control room today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. But I'm going to tell you up front, I don't know that I'm going to take a lot of phone calls because of all the breaking news that we have to talk about. Today, of course, is the anniversary of the fall of the Alamo, and I got a reader email asking for a special shout-out to Ron in Doylestown today. And the prediction he'll fall off of his chair, so I hope he doesn't get too badly hurt. Obviously, the big news right now is Obamagate. That's what they're starting to call it. And the backstory is that late last week, the security detail around Donald Trump discovered evidence of wiretaps and listening devices in Trump Tower in the areas where the Trump campaign had been organizing and having meetings. So Trump was being spied on. And immediately, of course, the corporate media is out there saying, oh, it's complete nonsense. It's just a wild allegation by Donald Trump. It's got nothing. You know, we need to go back to talking about how he's trading wet sloppy kisses with Vladimir Putin. Banner headline on the New York Times, Trump offering no evidence, says Obama tapped his phone, which strikes me as a really, really bizarre headline for the New York Slimes to have on there, because back on January 20th of this year, the New York Slimes had a front page above the fold story saying wiretapped data used in inquiry of Trump aides. So the New York Times is just out there smoking opium when they say that there's no evidence whatsoever when they had the evidence on their own newspaper. By the way, I've been searching this story all over the place, and notice, to nobody's surprise, if I use Google to search for stories on Obama wiretapping Trump, all of the denials and all of that get shoved up to the top of the search results. You go to any other search engine, such as Yandex or DuckDuckGo, and the stories are properly blended between those saying, yes, it did happen, and those saying, no, it did not happen. Now, yesterday, trying to put out the fire on this one, James Clapper, who was Obama's Director of National Intelligence, went on Meet the Press to just say, absolutely, there was no wiretapping. It could not happen. It was absolutely ridiculous here, which would be reassuring to us all, except, of course, that James Clapper was caught lying under oath to Congress about the NSA spying on ordinary citizens. So they're raising on a busted flush by trying to get all these old fossils out there and say, oh, yes, trust us, it didn't happen, it didn't happen. Now, it's beginning to look like Donald Trump did make a tremendous mistake keeping on FBI Director James Comey, because apparently, according to Judge Jeanine Pirro, Director Comey is urging the Department of Justice to just reject this wiretap claim, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. And so I think Comey definitely has to go, and it's time for us to start digging up all those stories about how Comey was overseeing drug cartel money laundering when he was a top executive at the HSBC Bank. Start getting that back on out there and make that go viral. Now, Donald Trump isn't buying any of this. The word we're getting out of Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who's the Deputy Communications Director, is that Donald Trump is simply not believing Comey's denials. And he shouldn't, because this all happened under Comey's watch. Now, at this point, they can't deny the wiretapping happened. There have been too many insiders who came on out, including a member of Obama's own administration, saying, yeah, it was going on. And Obama is saying, well, it was all the Department of Justice. I had nothing to do with it. Really, it was me. He's throwing his underlings under the bus here right now. So we have this Obama administration source confirms the wiretapping happened against Donald Trump. We're in full-on Watergate mode right here. And Obama's people are in total panic. The corporate media is in a total panic. The intelligence agencies who were involved are in a total panic. Now, former CIA analyst Larry C. Johnson is saying, according to his sources, yes, in point of fact, Barack Obama gave the green light for the NSA and CIA to spy on and sabotage Donald Trump. So, Mark Levin is out there saying that his sources are indicating no less than 6 federal agencies were involved in spying on Donald Trump and trying to wreck him. And even with all of that, they still couldn't get Hillary Clinton into the White House. And let's see. Now, according to Mark Levin, he said the tapping went back way before the allegations of Russian interference in the elections. It started before then. Now, the Obama people, let's do a quick shout out to our on-air affiliates rejoining our network. We're talking about Obamagate, the fact that President Obama, before the election, was spying on Donald Trump. And whether or not it was legal, or whether or not we've got another Watergate on our hands, and given how hard the hackers are hitting my server today, it's pretty clear they're trying to keep a lid on this story right now. So Mark Levin has documented the spying was going on before any allegations of Russian interference in the election. That's an important point. Keep that in mind. We're going to come back to that in just a little while. Now then, William Binney, who actually designed the NSA's mass surveillance system, is saying absolutely they were tapping Donald Trump's phone calls. There's absolutely no question. And they're not targeting foreigners. Now, it appears that partway through this spying, there was a concern expressed that it was, after all, illegal. It was, after all, a repeat of Watergate. And so the Obama administration tried to craft a legal fiction to say it was okay to do that based on the allegations that Trump and Russia were working together. Now, apparently the FBI actually refused twice to wiretap Trump, so Obama went around them to the Foreign Intelligence Service Act court, and they requested a warrant which named Donald Trump, and for once in its very long career, the FISA court rejected the warrant. Normally, FISA will grant something like 99.8% of all requested warrants. In this case, they turned them down. So the Obama administration went back to the FISA court with a new warrant about Russian individuals. It did not name Donald Trump. The FISA court granted the warrant, and the Obama administration then misused this warrant to spy on Trump and many connected to Donald Trump. And remember, all of this manufacturing of a FISA warrant happened after the spying was already underway. Now, Senator Ben Sasse, Republican of Nebraska, I'm sorry, that's Nevada, delivered a statement on Saturday. He wants to see that FISA court warrant. He thinks it should definitely be brought out and made public right now to see exactly what it said, and if, in point of fact, it was justified to be spying on Donald Trump's campaign on the basis of this warrant. Now remember, the Foreign Intelligence Service Act has the word foreign in it. The warrants are not supposed to apply domestically, and certainly not to a presidential candidate of the opposing party. Now, William Binney is out there saying exactly the same thing. This FISA warrant was a parallel construction to launder the improperly gained evidence through acceptable channels, trying to retroactively make it look like it was justified and legal on the basis of these allegations about Russia. And here's where it gets really interesting, because back on November 1st of last year, the FBI came on out and reported that their surveillance on the Trump campaign had not revealed any evidence whatsoever of Russian interference, Russia tampering or tinkering of any kind, and yet the Obama administration kept the wiretaps in place. That's where it starts to get really, really murky here. And remember, under the current technology, the government spooks can turn on the microphone and camera on Trump's personal cell phone even when he thinks it's turned off. They can do that to every one of us. Now, the reality is, contrary to the protestations, the whining in the corporate media, that there's nothing there, it's completely out of control. Paul Joseph Watson is out there saying there's significantly more evidence that Obama spied on Trump than evidence that Russia hacked the election. And that's absolutely true, especially when you have a member of Obama's former administration saying, yeah, it was common knowledge. And it gets worse than that. Obama was bugging Senator Jeff Sessions while he was still a senator, before he was even being considered for Attorney General. They were spying on him. Now here's where it gets really, really interesting, and pay very close attention to it. 1 week before the election, Hillary tweeted a message that seemed to indicate she knew that Trump was being wiretapped. And if this intelligence being gathered on Donald Trump was being shared with Hillary Clinton, then it clearly had nothing to do with Russian interference in the election and everything to do with politics. And that puts us right back firmly in Watergate. And apparently that first visa court warrant was requested immediately following that meeting between Attorney General Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton on the runway at the Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport in June of last year. They had a meeting, and all of a sudden, the wiretaps go on. This thing is as dirty as it gets. So all this story about Russia hacking, it's backfiring horribly. Because like the allegations of election fraud, oh, Russia's tinkering with our election, and yet all the election fraud actually found benefited Hillary Clinton. And so now Russia's hacking this, Russia's hacking that. No, it was the Obama administration tapping into the phones, the communications of the Trump campaign. And you can just smell the panic out there. You can just smell the panic out there. They don't know how to get in front of this. They can't get in front of this. They're trying to flood the corporate media with denials. They've got their page shills all over social media saying this is ridiculous. How dare you impugn Barack Obama? And everybody's out there, trying to put this down. Nancy Pelosi was out there saying, quote, it's just ridiculous for the President Trump, to say that President Obama would ever order any wiretap of an American citizen, any president. We just don't do that. And Obama spokesman saying neither President Obama nor any White House official ever ordered orchestrated surveillance on any U.S. citizen. Harumph, harumph, harumph. Well, unfortunately, that is not entirely accurate. But then you already knew that was going to prove to be the case. Because WikiLeaks has come on out with a list, by no means complete, of all the times Obama was spying on American citizens. There was the time the U.S. National Security Agency bugged a private climate change strategy meeting between UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Berlin. Obama bugged Chief of Staff at UN High Commissioner for Refugees for long-term interception targeting his Swiss telephone. Obama singled out the director of the Rules Division of the World Trade Organization and targeted his Swiss phone for long-term interception. Obama stole sensitive Italian diplomatic cables detailing how Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu implored Italy's Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi to help patch up the relationship with U.S. President Barack Obama. Obama intercepted top EU and Japanese trade missions discussing their secret strategy. None of this has anything to do with the war on terror. It's economics. It's economic espionage. Obama explicitly targeted 5 other top EU economic officials for long-term surveillance. Obama explicitly targeted the phones of Italy's ambassador to NATO and other top Italian officials. Obama intercepted details of a critical private meeting between then-French President Nicolas Sarkozy, Merkel, and Berlusconi, where the latter was told the Italian banking system was about to pop like a cork. We know that Obama wiretapped various individuals in the U.S. media that were reporting information not flattering to the Obama administration. Obama's Justice Department targeted journalists with wiretaps in 2013. And, of course, they've tapped the journalists over at WikiLeaks itself. In 2013, the Washington Post expressed its outrage after the revelation that the Department of Justice had investigated the news-gathering activities of a Fox News reporter as a potential crime in a probe of classified leaks. I wish they were looking at the leaks coming out of Trump's White House that intently right now. The reporter, Fox News' James Rosen, and his family were part of an investigation into government officials anonymously leaking information to journalists. Rosen was not charged, but he was spied on. Also in 2013, members of the Associated Press were targeted for the surveillance. The ultra-liberal New Yorker even noted that in moderate and liberal circles at least, the phone record scandal, partly because it involves dear old AP, and partly because it raises anew the specter of Big Brother, may well present the most serious threat to Obama's reputation. That is certainly true. It's coming on back to haunt him big time now. Reporter Cheryl Atkinson in 2014 said her personal computer and CBS laptop were hacked after she began filing stories about Benghazi that were unflattering to the Obama administration. A source who checked her laptop said the hacker used spyware proprietary to a government agency. So, yeah, they've been spying. The U.S. bugged Merkel's phone from 2002 to 2013. There is no question that Obama was using the surveillance state for his own gain. Now, despite the flood of denials coming from Obama and the corporate media's reassurance that it could never, ever possibly happen, just like they were saying last October, there could never be such a thing as an election fraud, the House Intelligence Committee has agreed. They are going to investigate the Obama administration wiretapping of the Trump campaign. This is going to get very, very ugly. Judicial Watch is now suing the CIA and the Department of Justice for Intel leak records related to the Michael Flynn case. And they had to file a lawsuit because the CIA and Department of Justice ignored the standard Freedom of Information Act requests. So much for the most transparent administration. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Rick in Arizona, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, you hear me, Mike?
I hear you.
Okay, Trump's on my mind.
Yes.
I was just thinking, this sure seems like just a bunch of package of distractions that they usually run across the American people to keep the things going the way they were before Trump was president. You know, we ain't going to see no wall. We ain't going to see 11 million deported and bringing them back in. Hillary ain't going to jail. All we're doing is hearing, seeing and talking about these distractions. And if you want to know,
this is not a distraction. This is not a distraction. This goes right to the heart.
Really?
Yeah, this goes right to the heart of the criminality of the Obama administration. And, you know, Obama's people...
need a court order.
Obama...
Would you...
Hang on a second. Okay, Trump is now in control of all that documentation. And it's going to come out. Trey Gowdy was on TV saying, we're going to get the paperwork on this because now all those documents are under the control of Trump, not Obama. Unless they're going to back up the paper shredding trucks and start getting rid of the files, this thing is going to come on out. So thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. No, this bugging of Trump by Obama is not a distraction. The new Immigration Act is a distraction. The corporate media has moved on to that. They've dropped Obamagate like a hot potato, and they're focusing endlessly on whether there'll be a legal challenge to the new Trump immigration order. And Trump actually blunted his own attack. He should have held off a few days to let Obamagate be the focus and gain more traction. Now, Trey Gowdy is out there, and he's definitely loaded for bear. And in addition to this question about whether Obama was wiretapping Trump and sharing the intelligence with the Hillary Clinton campaign and with Chuck Schumer, which has come on out, he's also after the leakers and saying that he wants to see these people in jail. He wants to see examples made out of them. Now, we're hearing right now that Donald Trump is absolutely furious. And he's got every right to be. And we're hearing that, Trump is going to regain the initiative with this. The other day we were talking about Trump needs to regain the initiative. Now he's got it, and he's got to hang on to it and use it as hard as he can. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And I'll tell you the main way that we know that the spying on Trump by Obama is not a distraction, because ever since this story broke, my web server has been under nearly constant hack attack. They're trying to find some way to keep this story from getting on out there. They wouldn't be going to that effort if it was just make-believe and there wasn't any there. Let's take a phone call from Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Hi, Mike. Yeah, you're right. This is not a distraction. This is right now a battle of intelligence agents in the same agency. They are taking sides. It's basically, like we said, a civil war internally right now. And he's got the intelligence most likely, because I believe he had a visitor at Trump Tower. I forgot the guy's name, Rogers, maybe the last name. I remember somebody said that he met him at Trump Tower, and maybe he's the one that delivered some of this intelligence on how, he was basically spied on, not tapping phones / computers, wireless phones.
My understanding is that they were doing a security sweep of Trump Tower. Trump's own private security detail was doing a sweep, and they found all these bugs, and that's what has exploded this whole thing. It's just like Watergate. They found the stuff by accident, and now everyone's going to be circling the wagons out here. And certainly the online polls are saying, this is gaining traction. They can't make this one go away. And all of Obama's supporters are out there saying, well, the president does have this authority, and we could do this, and we have to resolve that issue about the Russian. Politics is perception, and right now the perception for the vast majority of the American people is this is another Watergate. In fact, this one looks to be far worse.
Yeah, Mike, you said it's ugly. It's going to get ugly. It's ugly already. We're in a pivotal moment now. This is dangerous, and this is Banana Republic crap.
Yes.
To bug a political opponent. This is Stasi stuff, man. Geez.
I'll tell you what the real danger is. The real danger here is all governments have faction fights internally, but they're always hidden, because a government, in order to win the support and trust and faith of its population, must present a front that the government is united and functioning smoothly, and there are no problems. But when that internal faction fighting breaks out into the open, then the people start to realize just what the real nature of their government is. And again, this is a symptom that we saw in the former Soviet Union in the months just before it all fell apart. And to me, it's feeling, I've been predicting a Soviet Union-style collapse for the United States for quite a while, and right now it feels like we might be on the verge of it. Yeah, because internally there'd be a civil war with back and forth, but now it's out in the open. But not just that, but there's fracturing and faction fights outside with the protesters. So yeah, this is Soviet Union era, collapse stuff. Hey, and then did you check out Loretta Lynch with her blood on the streets? Oh yeah, I'm going to be talking about her. Again, she said. I'm going to be talking about her a little bit later because basically, she's committed a crime with that video. That's a declaration of war, Mike. Yep. Against our own citizens by her. It's sedition, man. It is. It absolutely is. The people you're dealing with. Yep. They're not going to be happy until they get a civil war or they destroy the nation. It's unfortunately, it just feels like it's about to all come apart. All right, Dustin, we're going to let you go. Thanks an awful lot. Now, behind all of this, of course, there is still all the back and forth where the Democrats who are now drooling over the fact that Sessions was forced to recuse himself from the upcoming investigation into the Trump-Russia link, are now drooling over Mike Pence for supposedly using a private a public email service, regular email for state business when he was governor, even though under Indiana law that was absolutely legal for him to do. And of course, as governor of Indiana, he was not in possession of classified information. So it doesn't matter if he used open email or not. But it turns out the new chairman of the DNC has his own Clinton-esque email scandal. When he was at the Department of Justice, Perez was using his personal email accounts to conduct official DOJ business 1,200 times. And apparently Perez is acknowledged to have committed at least 34 violations of the Federal Records Act. All right, we're going to take another break for commercials here. We'll be right back with more of this information. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the ghost of the email scandal. And it's been resurrected by this attempt by Democrats to attack Vice President Mike Pence over the fact that while he was governor, he used a regular outside email service for state business. The point being that under state law, that was perfectly acceptable. And he was not in charge of classified information. He wasn't in possession of classified information, so it doesn't matter. But they're trying to make a big deal about it. And as a result, the old email scandal is breaking into the public mind here again. And WikiLeaks has come on out with a new revelation that the Clinton campaign sent nuclear weapons secrets over open email. Definitely a tacky no-no. All right, we're going to grab a couple more phone calls here. Peter in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, this is astounding, all of it. But you know what? It boils down to a couple things here. Obama's history. Remember he used the IRS as a weapon against his opponents there.
Yes.
Many fold times more than Nixon ever did. Remember when he bugged Associated Press? I think you went over that. The mysterious death of Michael Hastings. On and on and on here. But these guys are so dirty, Mike, and the whole Clinton-Obama thing was so dirty that when Trump started talking about draining the swamp, that was like a declaration of total war. They couldn't afford to let him be in office for very long. And everything, they would pull out every stop in order to prevent him from getting access. It's just the kind of thing
and they still failed. Now. They still failed. All the vote rigging, all the spying, all the media bias against him, and they still couldn't steal that White House for Hillary Clinton.
And Mike, how about the revelations that you talked about earlier? I believe it was Friday, about how Soros and Obama were linked in all these, and Obama was laundering money and getting them to Soros groups and leftist action groups that now he's assuming command of.
Well, you're mixing two stories. You're mixing two stories because the one about Obama is apparently there was a secret slush fund set up in the Department of Justice. And the way it was working is the Department of Justice would threaten to bring charges against large corporations, and then a deal would be made where the charges would be dropped or reduced if the corporation would make a charitable donation to blah, blah, blah. And apparently a lot of corporations went along with that. And that's another big stink that's lurking there in the background.
Well, Mike, I'm betting that you can link those. That the money that they were forced to donate was to these leftist action groups that Obama is now assuming control of.
Yeah, there's no question about that. It was all these leftist groups that were getting all this money.
Yeah, so Mike, it's totally over. They can't allow Trump to stay in there. They'll either have to kill him or go to the Civil War because they cannot stand to have any kind of scrutiny of what they've been doing.
Well, trying to go to a civil war, trying to take our soft coup to a hard coup is going to be problematic because the word I am getting from sources within the military is that the military rank and file will stand with Donald Trump if it comes to that.
I sure hope that's right, because it may come to that, really.
Look, most military people I know are strict constitutionalists. They may be ill-used, but by and large, most of them are really good people.
Mike, this guy is the worst. I think he ranks with the very worst of our presidents, and he already is the very worst of our ex-presidents.
I agree.
Yeah?
I agree. I absolutely agree. Okay?
Man. Thanks, Mike.
All right, we're going to switch over to Bob in Las Vegas. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. This Obamagate scandal makes painfully clear how urgent electoral reform is. I know you haven't heard a response from the White House. Robert David Steele hasn't yet. And look at the lengths that these people will go to stay in power.
Yeah, unfortunately, Donald Trump may be a little too busy right now to deal with the vote fraud issue. He may think, and he with good reason, that it can be put off until next year.
Sure. But I mean, look at the extent these people will what they'll do to cling to power. But I'm hoping. I mean, this is the time for grown-up Democrats, Tulsi Gabbard, Joe Manchin, to come out and condemn this kind of behavior, to stand with the president and say, look, we don't support this. We're not with the Chucky Schumers, the Nancy Pelosi's, basically the fanatics of the Democratic Party. We're the adults of the Democratic Party, and we're going to stand up and stand with President Trump to condemn this kind of illegal behavior.
Well, right now, everyone's talking about where's the dividing line. Is it Republican versus Democrat? Is it young versus old? Is it neocon versus neoliberal? It's actually simpler than that. It's all of those who have committed crimes for which they could be sent to jail against the rest of us who want a restoration of our constitutional republic. That's really what it comes down to.
Right. And you know what? I think back to all those statements that Obama made while he was president. The IRS targeting of liberty groups, and I believe the Associated Press story, and he would say, "This is the first I've heard of it."
Yes.
This is a guy who basically is wiretapping and bugging everybody, and it's the first he heard of it.
Well, and then, of course, it came on out that he had known about it much earlier than that. I mean, Obama, and this is, even back when he was doing the IRS targeting, I said, this guy's already headed into Nixon territory, and by golly, was I right about that.
Absolutely. But don't think that these people are beyond even the people of Obama and Hillary of basically trying to divide the military itself. They've done it to the American people. They'll try to divide the military itself. Have the military at each other's throats. Meaning trying to gain the favor of the minorities who are in the military. They'll stop at nothing, these people.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm afraid of, and we're either looking at a civil war in the streets of America, or I mean, given my choice, I'd rather go with a Soviet Union-style collapse, because when the Soviet Union fell, there was actually very little bloodshed involved, and I would prefer to see that than another civil war in the streets of America.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to take another phone call from James in North Carolina, then we're going to close the lines for a bit and get back to the news. James, what's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Just a couple of questions. I had seen a couple of articles that Trey Gowdy was to be assigned to the House Intelligence Committee, but I didn't see him listed on the membership roll on that committee. I was just wondering, now I'm looking at the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence of the House. I don't know if there's another committee.
There's a larger committee around that, and that's what Trey has been assigned to. And I'm certainly glad that he was, because if this Obamagate scandal really gains traction, it's going to be an indictment not just of the Obama administration and the Hillary Clinton campaign, but of the rogue intelligence agencies that need to be brought back in line. Because clearly these agencies that took part in this all committed crimes, and the leadership of these intelligence agencies ought to go to jail for it, because they're not above the law just because they're the chief spook. And ultimately, we need to get them under control, because they act like they run the nation and we're just here to make them richer. And again, when you look at the Clintons and Obama to a lesser extent and the Bushes, their political fortunes all intersect back in Arkansas in the mid-1980s with that CIA program to manufacture untraceable military weapons and smuggle them down to Nicaragua, and it was all being funded with literally tons of cocaine being smuggled back into the United States of America, sold to our children, with the money being laundered through all those land flip deals, savings and loan associations, and the Arkansas Development Finance Authority.
Well, I'll tell you, from what you say, and that's probably just a partial a rendering of it. If they get into this in any extent, it's going to turn over a lot of rocks.
Yeah, that's exactly the problem. Trump went on in there to drain the swamp. The alligators are already trying to fight back, but he doesn't know how deep that swamp goes, or just how stinky it is at the very bottom, because all of this goes back in an almost continual path of corruption, all the way back at least to when the CIA was smuggling opium from Vietnam back into the United States of America inside the body bags of our dead kids.
Yeah. getting back to the House Intelligence Committee, the chairman is listed as Devin Nunes of California. I don't know really much about him. I've heard the name a few times.
Yes.
Do you happen to have any information? Is he?
Well, he's been talking tough lately, but I'm waiting to see what he actually does. As far as Trey Gowdy is concerned, that man has been walking his talk all along. And if anybody's going to be able to pry this open, it's going to be Trey Gowdy. And I'm really, really sorry that he was not considered for Attorney General. And if Sessions is forced to resign, I strongly recommend to the Trump administration they look at Trey Gowdy being the new Attorney General.
Well, I hope it doesn't come to that. But he'll be, I think Gowdy will be quite, probably even more visible in the role he's in than he would be as Attorney General. But,
I agree.
At any rate.
He's certainly going to be visible on the independent media. I think we can count on the corporate media to absolutely turn a blind eye to all of this stuff, because if Obamagate explodes out into a new Nixonian epic, there's no way the corporate media, which had a pro-Hillary, anti-Trump bias all through last year's election season, they can't delink from that. They can't isolate themselves. They're going to be tarnished with that brush of this wide-ranging agreement to steal the White House for Hillary Clinton.
Right, yeah. Well, just one more thing I happened to notice. Mike Pompeo was on that committee until he became CIA director.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll take a look at it. I'm sure there are some pretty strong members on there besides Gowdy.
Yeah, well, my nickel is wagered on Trey Gowdy. All right, we're going to let you go here. We're going to close the phone lines for a little bit here because we've got so much stuff to cover before the end of the program. Now, getting on back to this constant harangue from the corporate media that Donald Trump talked to the Russians and Jeff Sessions talked to the Russians, and House Speaker Paul Ryan is out there saying, look, we meet with the ambassadors all the time. That's why the ambassadors are here. And as a matter of fact, in the last 2 months, every single U.S. senator has met with Russian representatives at one point or another as part of the normal course of business. That's what they do. So they're trying to make a mountain out of a molehill because Sessions' 2 meetings with the Russian ambassador, the first was at a social function where Sessions was sent there by Obama, and there were a whole bunch of ambassadors, and they all met each other, and they said, hello, big deal. And the second one was a meeting with the Russian ambassador in his capacity as a U.S. senator. Now, if you go back to the transcript of Senator Sessions' confirmation hearing, Al Franken asks him if there were any contacts between the Clinton campaign and the Russian ambassador to talk about the campaign. And that's why Sessions said no, because that isn't what they talked about when they had the official meeting here. Now, Nancy Pelosi was asked if she'd met with the Russian ambassador and said no, and almost immediately, thanks to the internet, a photo surfaced of her with Sergei Kislyak, the ambassador. She got caught in another lie. Now, getting back to what I was saying before, I'm very, very concerned about the immediate future of the United States of America. The liberal Democrats are literally pushing for a civil war. You've got former Attorney General Loretta Lynch on video saying there needs to be blood in the streets. Or at the very least, we're heading into a Soviet Union-style collapse. Of the two, I prefer the latter. There's going to be a lot less blood of innocent people spilled. And I'm not the only person saying that. Over at LouRockwell.com, they have an article, Washington and America Self-Implode at the Hands of a Treasonous Obama-Led Shadow Government. And that's exactly what's happening. Now, let's get on back to Loretta Lynch. She came on out there with a video posted on the Facebook page of the Senate Democrats. And basically, Lynch is literally inciting Democrats to commit sedition by resisting and overthrowing President Trump. the duly elected President of the United States of America with marches, blood, and death. Now, Title 18, Section 2383 defines sedition as whoever incites, sets on foot, assists, or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or the laws thereof, or gives aid or comfort thereto. Loretta Lynch ought to be in prison right now. Even the New York Slimes is hitting the panic button. They have an op-ed out there saying that President Trump ought to be immediately stopped from making any more changes to the system, undermining any more of Obama's legacy. He should be stopped until this question of Trump's relationship with Russia is fully resolved. And again, going back to last November, the FBI, on the basis of these dubiously legal wiretaps, said, we found nothing. There is no evidence of any kind of Russian collusion, cooperation. And they're still out there pushing this bad Russia, bad Russia. It's like they're trying to bring back the McCarthy era. Now, new study, and this is going to surprise nobody. The vast majority of corporate media coverage on Trump's first month in office was hostile, 90% of the time. This is from the Media Research Center. And basically said that, especially considering this is supposed to be the so-called honeymoon period, the corporate media coverage was 88% negative against Donald Trump. The battle lines are being drawn. And by the way, from the corporate media's point of view, those of us in the independent media, we're part of the enemy as well. They don't like us one tiny bit. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking about the corporate media, and they're not going to be able to de-link from Obamagate. This thing is gaining traction. Politics is perception. People are seeing it as a new Watergate, and possibly a more corrupt criminal president than Richard Nixon. I'm sure the ghost of Richard Nixon is out there breathing a sigh of relief. But the corporate media can't disconnect itself. They can't disassociate. Paul Craig Roberts is out there saying, congratulations to the CIA for assembling the world's greatest collection of media prostitutes in its CNN brothel. And that sounds about accurate. Of course, around here we call them prostitutes and correspondents, because that's what they do. They are not paid those $1 million salaries to tell you the truth. You can get the truth for free, or for a few small donations to whatreallyhappened.com. Those people at the major TV news networks are paid those $1 million salaries to be very convincing liars to get you to believe as the rulers want you to believe. And the rulers are now realizing that they are in trouble. There was an op-ed over at the New York Slimes claiming the Internet threatens democracy because the flow of information is now bypassing the establishment class. That's it. We're a threat to democracy because now we're talking to ourselves, person to person, rather than accepting what the establishment tells us to believe. And they're saying they're blaming the Internet for the collapse of establishment authority. Well, when that authority is based on lies, it should collapse. I've read that Constitution many, many, many times. Nowhere in there is the government given the authority to lie to the American people. We even used to have laws against government propaganda used on the American people. So anytime the government lies to us, they're acting unconstitutionally, illegally, and they delegitimize the entire U.S. government by doing that. So the New York Slimes is out there saying, oh, it's a threat to... Actually, it's a threat to the system. It's a threat to the established order. Mea culpa maxima. And darn proud of it, I might add. I will not live under a government that lies to me. Better no government at all than a government that lies to me. Another article over here from Investment Watch blog. The New York Slimes, we hate the Internet. We lost control of the narrative. Yes, you have. And that was the whole point. To bring back free and open discussion of the issues instead of filtered, constant, uniform propaganda to get us to give all of our money to the bankers, to buy all the medicines Big Pharma wants us to buy, to eat GMO food happily, to imagine that a little radiation is good for us, and to send our children off to be killed and crippled in pointless wars of conquest that only make the money junkies richer than they are. And the problem with the money junkie is it's never going to be enough. It doesn't matter how much money a money junkie has, they have to have more, no matter who must die for it. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2, the phone lines. We're going to go ahead and reopen the phone lines, 800-313-9443. Now, to show you just how completely wacko banana the liberals have gone, first of all, we posted this a link to a video of this girl who showed up to one of the pro-Trump marches, and all she did was stand in the middle of the crowd screaming at the top of her lungs just to try and disrupt everything. And Barbara Streisand is now out there claiming that Donald Trump is causing her to gain weight. And she's upset about that. And I hate to be this way, and I actually met Barbara Streisand, and I worked with her long ago. She seemed very pleasant at the time, but Babs, I really don't care what you weigh. And having lost a large amount of weight myself, I think you could lose that weight if you wanted to, and Donald Trump can't stop you. It's not like Donald Trump is going to have you thrown in a dungeon, strapped into a chair, and feed you chocolate eclairs. Okay. Now then, we posted a graphic that I have to respond to something here real quick, and there we are. Now then, we posted a link to a graphic, an actual scan of a tax file from 2014 from the McCain Institute, confirming that he was given $300,000 by the Rothschilds and $1 million by the Saudis. So it's starting to look like the McCain Institute is being run much the same way as the Clinton Foundation was. And I think it's time to start looking at all of these senators and representatives and various other officials in government who are running so-called charitable foundations and actually find out if they're really charities or just slush funds and pay for play. Apparently, Nancy Pelosi, as she gallivants across the country, is spending over $100,000 on in-flight booze and food. Guess who gets to pay for it, right? Anyway. Turning to the international scene here, former French President Francois Hollande, or outgoing French President Francois Hollande, is saying his ultimate duty before leaving office is to somehow prevent Marine Le Pen from winning the upcoming election in France. Kind of like Obama saying his ultimate duty is to prevent Donald Trump from winning the election, which you're not supposed to do. Presidents are not supposed to undermine their predecessors. But according to Hollande, Le Pen's victory in the presidential election is a threat. It's a threat. I wonder what it's a threat to. Is it a threat to the Eiffel Tower? Is it a threat to the Louvre? Is it a threat to the French people? No, it's a threat to the New World Order, globalist ambitions. It's a threat to the New World Order's open borders agenda. It's certainly a threat to the European Union itself. But Marine Le Pen is representing the French people, not the globalist agenda. We have too many world leaders who think their first allegiance is to George Soros' dreams of a global empire. Marine Le Pen came out with this really wonderful quote, in which she says, France isn't bikinis on the beach. France is Brigitte Bardot. And if you're my age, you will remember Brigitte Bardot and how wonderful she was and what a sterling recommendation for France Brigitte was. And Marine Le Pen is absolutely right. Turning to the war zones, a lot of bad information. Apparently there's a convoy of American tanks inside Syria with 500 Special Forces troops joining this battle supposedly to support Kurdish troops in the area. And I wish to point out something very important that the corporate media keeps missing. The United States does not have the permission of the Syrian government to have a single soldier in there, let alone a column of tanks on the ground. By any reasonable definition of the word, this is a U.S. military invasion of somebody else's country. That's a bad thing. Now, NATO may be looking at the chaos emerging in Washington, D.C. and realizing that its strongest supporter and instigator and ally may be about to take a major stumble, Soviet Union style. And they're starting to basically pull back on the anti-Russia rhetoric and saying that maybe change is possible and we could work toward defrosting relations with Moscow. Because if the United States collapses, the primary mover for a war between NATO and Russia is going to be gone. And NATO isn't going to want to go to war with Russia all on their own. I don't think they really wanted to go to war with Russia anyway. And Russia certainly doesn't want a war either. All right, we're going to do a quick shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And by the way, I apologize to the listeners on RBN. I'm getting all these emails and tweets about the poor sound quality coming through the streaming feed from RBN, but our technicians are working on it right now. We do know there's a problem, so you don't need to email us anymore. All right, let's go ahead and grab a phone call from George in San Francisco. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Hi, Michael. It's great to talk to you again. It's been a while. You know, what you've been talking about so far, these politicians, what's going on in Washington, especially with the, I guess they're calling it now Obamagate, they're really organized crime politicians.
Yes, they are.
They're behaving just like organized crime, and their playbook is, you know, Saul Alinsky, who got his, wasn't it his doctorate studying the Capone Nitty mob and their tactics.
Yeah.
So it's the same stuff.
Okay, let me ask you a quick question. Do you know the difference between a dumb criminal and a smart criminal?
No, what's the difference?
Dumb criminals go to jail, smart criminals go to Congress.
But I'm dumb, so to speak, yeah.
What makes you think it's a joke?
Yeah, you're right. It's not a joke. It's not a joke at all.
Well, it's a joke on us, you know.
Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to give you a personal account of what happened in Berkeley this last weekend. We are older people, and we weren't there at the very beginning, which is good because more of the violence happened closer to that. This was at the Berkeley Civic Center Park, which is not Berkeley campus. It is next door to the City Hall and the Berkeley High School campus. And it used to be called Provo Park. But we saw it was mostly, if not all, you know, these Soros justice warriors and the really black groups association with, I mean, black as in dark, tactics groups associated with them beating on Trump supporters. And I really have to give a shout out and enormous thanks to the Bikers for Trump and the other people there who were obviously trained in advanced nonviolence techniques, who, as soon as somebody would be beating up on somebody, they would just grab them from behind and pull them away. And they had not been there. The situation, I am without doubt, would have been far worse. So we're very grateful for them. Berkeley has become a no-go zone. I grew up in Berkeley. I moved to San Francisco almost 40 years ago, but I lived there for almost 20. And it's being an open Trump supporter or an open conservative and showing it. It's like, you know, you're a Muslim, you're a non-Muslim in a Muslim no-go zone in Europe now.
Yes.
It's becoming like that. And I think what happened with the Berkeley Milo protest several weeks ago, what that was about, in my view, was to intimidate students. Just keep your mouth shut. Or if you have conservative thoughts, or you could get socially ostracized or even beat up. Just keep your mouth shut.
Brown shirt tactics.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, and what people need to understand is that we were there in 2012 when Ron Paul spoke. There were so many people there, students listening to it. You know, when they didn't like what the NSA was doing, and Ron Paul was speaking out especially about that, the spying going on. And, you know, there were so many people that they couldn't fit them in an auditorium, so they did it outside, 2,000 or 3,000 people, and he was extremely well received. 2 years later, approximately, Rand Paul spoke there at Berkeley, and it wasn't as big a crowd, but it was big, and he was well received on the same thing too. So there was and has been a small conservative groundswell building on the Berkeley campus, and you know they just want to control those thinkers, make sure there are good Soros justice warriors, and that they come out in favor of all this other stuff, and they're afraid of what happens if the elite, you know, the cream of the intelligent people coming out of Berkeley start going the other way and start becoming conservative. So I think that's part of why this crackdown has been so vicious. It's also, I think, so vicious because Trump won. And they're even more scared of what's happening because of that. You know, what happens if Berkeley students, after Trump winning, start going more conservative?
Well, here's the problem. Okay, again, any group that is trying to bring about a socio-political change needs the support and sympathy of the general population. And all of these liberal Democrats, Soros people, Black Lives Matter, by their behavior, they're putting out a bad brand image that the general population are not seeing as sympathetic, let alone something that they feel they could support. And so at this point, it almost seems like the ultimate goal is simply to create chaos in the streets of America to make it impossible for the nation to govern itself, leading to its possible balkanization and breakup. But that, of course, is contrary to the agenda of the New World Order.
Right. Well, I don't know that it is contrary. And the reason I would say that is because you know, if they break up the United States, it might be easier to control a bunch of smaller countries than one big one. I mean, look at that. Wasn't that part of the rationale behind the Civil War? Let's break the United States in two. It's easier to get both sides in debt. It's easier to control two smaller countries.
Well, that was part of the agenda from the private central banker's point of view. But again, they didn't leap into the Civil War until it was already on the verge of happening, and they didn't really start to get involved until Lincoln issued the greenbacks, and that put them all into an absolute total panic. But the New World Order has been working to try and build larger and larger units of nation states, then federalize them like Juncker was trying to do to the EU, and then merge all these federalized unions into a single New World Order. But at this point, the globalist agenda seems to be in serious, serious trouble. And I've been saying over the years that all these steps that are being taken to create a one-world government have actually created a political climate that could lead to a global revolution against all the elites and all the money junkies all over the planet at the same time. And that would be a rather amazing event, I think.
What breaks my heart, Michael, is you're absolutely correct. And their agenda is in trouble, but not so much in California. It's still the dominant, you know, fake world agenda that amongst many people in my fellow state.
Well, California is in serious trouble because they're still allowing all the illegals to pour on in, and the indigenous Californians are now all leaving. Businesses are leaving because of the extremely high tax rates and no benefits for those taxes. And Californians are leaving. I mean, Claire and I, we loved the time that we lived in Southern California. I was just up until my blacklisting out of the film industry. And we would like to find a way to move back to the mainland this year, so I'm available for more public speaking things, and Claire has more choirs to pitch her music to. But California is definitely off the list of places we might move to. There's no way we would go back to California at this point. The state has gone insane.
I'd like to, if we have time, I want to tell you a little bit more about what we saw that happened. We did see one, there was one person who was pepper sprayed directly in their eyes.
Yes.
And people were pouring, milk over that to try and help them better.
Mm-hmm.
There were no speakers. I saw what happens when you have...
Can I ask you a question? Who used
Sure.
the pepper spray? Was it a law enforcement officer or just one of the anti-Trump people?
Anti-Trump people.
Okay. I don't know what the pepper spray laws are in California, but certainly under the pepper spray law here in Hawaii, that would be considered assault. If the person who was pepper sprayed had not actually presented a threat to the person using the pepper spray, then the person using the pepper spray can be charged with assault and battery and put in jail. And that ought to happen. We need to start finding ways to get all these anti-Trump troublemakers thrown in prison, at which point they're going to find out George Soros is not going to pay for their legal expenses. He's just going to let them rot in prison because there's lots more useful idiots out there for Soros to play around with.
About an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours after this had started, at 2 o'clock Pacific time, much of the crowd had broken away, especially the Trumpers. But some of them were behind somebody with a "Don't Tread on Me" sign and some other American flags. They started walking up the sidewalk, up Alston Street, toward the campus. And we were walking on the sidewalk, on the left sidewalk, and the anti-Trump people started taking to the street and then running up so that they could get next to us and then pivot left to push us up against the walls, and fortunately that was only a few people, but they started beating on one person who was directly in front of us. We're older people, and I couldn't do much. I had to protect my wife. We just kind of ducked around a little corner.
Okay, where were the police in all this? Where were the police in all this? I mean, this is all felony assault that you're describing to me.
I know. And the police were basically in a stand-down mode. They did arrest a few people, but they were mostly in a stand-down mode during this time. We were dressed neutral, and we had to pull in this little building nook and cranny. And then as the people went by and as we came out, we were now in the anti-Trump crowd. We're on the sidewalk. Had we been wearing Trump colors, I'm sure we would have been beaten. And so we were neutral. But when they came back around towards the park, one other thing I wanted to point it out, I noticed a big white truck about 10 feet high, no windows, no driver, but the engine running, and I'm thinking, well, it's one of two things. It's probably most likely surveillance. I've seen it at other civic center rallies and stuff. Mm-hmm. My hope is that what we're not looking at is the use of so-called non-lethal weapons, electronic weapons that you can use microwave with.
Yeah, well, those require an external antenna. It was probably surveillance. I remember when I was in New York City for the 10th anniversary of 9/11, spotting these government surveillance trucks that were painted like they were from UPS and the post office and various other things. But the one that was really obviously spying on our little symposium was just up the street. It was a UPS truck. It was parked, engine running, nobody inside it, coned off, and it just stayed there all day long. Now, having learned a little something about UPS, they generally drive their trucks around during the daytime. So the fact that this one was just sitting there hour after hour kind of gave it all away.
The one other thing that never made the media anywhere, so this is the first place that it's being discussed even, is that Berkeley closed its BART subway station. So that people who came there on public transit, if you didn't know how to get alternate transit back, you were stuck. Now, they may have reopened it a few hours later, but we went back there, it was closed. And this affected people who weren't even at this march, who were just downtown. There was one German lady and some other people. We were directing them how to find buses several blocks away to get back to San Francisco or back to other cities. But I don't know if anything happened to the station. There wasn't anything about that, but they did close the station. It was kind of eerie to see that happen.
That doesn't sound like something that normally happens. Anyway, listen, George, going to have to let you go. Gave you a lot of airtime. We're going to take a commercial break. We're going to be back with another phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Getting on. We've got one more phone call. Alex in Texas. Aloha, Alex. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I was calling because I'd like to know if perhaps maybe my thinking was off too much, or I'm giving it a little bit more thought than I should. But you know how people aren't really, they're not really prepared. Society's not really prepared for, and I mean the global audience in general, population rather, is not really prepared to see our leaders as so-called pedophiles and people who hurt children. And I'm wondering if this whole Obamagate thing isn't just a secondary reason to have him arrested, him and all those involved arrested, while at the same time, removing the top people from the pedophile, I guess, rings.
At this point, anything that gets them locked up and discredited is going to work for me, whether it's the primary, secondary, or tertiary scandal. We know that by and large, these people have been engaged in numerous crimes. Again, look at the Clintons and the Bushes going back to Arkansas in the 1980s and involved drug running, murder, money laundering, and it's not like we're going to prosecute them for all the crimes. That would be a waste of time. They can only serve one life sentence. But anything that gets them down. But again, the reason Obamagate is gaining traction is because people of my age remember Watergate and just what a psychic shock it was to realize that our government were not composed of these lofty, well-spirited, well-intentioned individuals, who basically sneezed marble, but were in fact crooks and criminals. And the younger generation hasn't had that apotheosis just yet. They're about to get it. And so right now, the Obamagate is their most vulnerable point, and I think that's what we need to focus on right now.
The reason I say this, and I think this, is because in El Salvador, the people who did the most horrific crimes, rape of children, women, and whatnot, they were part of a military junta. And when these people went under trial, they didn't go under trial for those things. They went under trial for treason against the government, and that's how
whatever works.
I guess you could say
whatever works.
Exactly.
Let's just stay with that. Anyway, listen, we're going to let you go. I'm going to take one more call, then we're going to close the phone lines again and get some news. Richard in Washington, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
It's the Greater Israel Project.
What about it?
I was wondering, you keep getting all these people on the television. It seems like there's only a handful of them. And like on Sunday morning, the talking heads just seem to be a couple of handfuls of them too. So I looked up the contributions from the Pro-Israel Project and AIPAC.
Yes.
And I got a list of them here.
Well, we only have about another minute to this break, so you're just going to have to sum up for us.
Okay, well, what we have is Joseph Lieberman, John McCain, Mitch McConnell, Carl Levin, Nancy Pelosi, that's the AIPAC donators, and Mitch McConnell, Charles Schumer, Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, and John McCain, and Dianne Feinstein, and Al Franken.
Yes.
So this is the people that are getting donations from pro-Israel.
Oh yeah, there's no question about that, and they're rabid supporters of Israel and of Eretz Israel. That's the aim of the Greater Israel Project, is Israel as it's described in the Bible from the Nile to the Euphrates. And, of course, the fact that there's going to be a lot of bloodshed along the way is hardly an impediment to them. Anyway, listen, thanks for the phone call, Richard. We're going to let you go for a commercial break. We're going to close the phone lines for a little while because I got more news I need to get to, and we'll be right back. And And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, getting back to the war zones here. The Donbass is starting to break away from Ukraine, and apparently Russia is now recognizing the official documents put out by the Democratic, the DNR and LNR authorities, visas and so forth and so on. Novorossiyan authorities have nationalized all the key factories of the Donbass. And so they're going through all the steps of declaring themselves to be an independent country, and Poroshenko is really, despite all the bloodshed, unable to do a thing about it. In fact, there's an article that came out of Sputnik News saying that full implementation of the Minsk agreements will lead to Poroshenko's ouster. And that's why Poroshenko has been objecting to the Minsk agreements, because he wants to hang on to his job over there. Now, Turkey is starting to play some very dangerous games in Syria. They're starting to intrude into Syria following a meeting between McCain and Erdogan. Apparently, Turkey shut off the flow of water into Syria, which is a violation of international rules of water access. And so McCain's over there just trying to get this war going any way that he can. And they're keeping Trump busy with all this Russian investigation. Now we're hearing word that Democrats may move to shut down the government the middle of this month over the debt ceiling debate, unless the Republicans agree to have an investigation into the Trump-Russia link with an independent counsel of the Democrats' own choosing. That's why they wanted to get Senator Sessions, or rather Jeff Sessions, AG Sessions, out of there, is they want to have the choice of who's in charge of the investigation so that they can basically say whatever they want about the president and Russia with impunity. That's how dirty this thing is getting. Now, over in North Korea, Kim Jong-un has fired 4 test missiles. And, of course, the mainstream media is out there. They're ICBM missiles. Well, technically, all missiles are ballistic missiles. But they're testing their missiles. And here's where those things, a backlash, are going to come from. I have been commenting on the poor quality of North Korea's tests by saying that it looks like there's an engineering failure in their launchers. But according to this article that came out of Zero Hedge, apparently the reason so many North Korean test launches fail, and this is according to the New York Slimes, is 3 years ago Obama ordered Pentagon officials to step up cyber strikes against North Korea's missile program in order to sabotage their test launches in their opening seconds. So what is North Korea going to do? They're going to test more missiles. And every time they test more missiles, the corporate media says, oh, they're belligerent, they're aggressive, they're doing this, they're doing that. And all the time it's been the Pentagon hacking into North Korea's systems and crashing their missiles. Now, here's a very interesting story. There's a new book out called Clinton Incorporated, The Audacious Rebuilding of a Political Machine. Daniel Halper has basically got some on-the-record interviews with former officials that confirm that Benjamin Netanyahu offered to trade all of the tape recordings made of Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky's sex talk in exchange for the release of convicted Israeli spy Jonathan Pollard. Now, it's long been suspected that Israel was behind the bugging of Monica Lewinsky's phone, especially because as soon as Bill Clinton was telling Monica Lewinsky their phone sex had been recorded, he ordered the FBI to call off the hunt for Israel's top spy in the U.S. establishment, codenamed Mega. And now from this book we're getting confirmation, yes, it was Israel. And they tape recorded, spied on Monica Lewinsky, they got the phone sex sessions, and tried to barter them for Jonathan Pollard. Now, Bill Clinton balked at that, but he did call off the FBI from searching for Israel's top spy in the U.S. establishment. Now, over the last couple of weeks, we had a whole bunch of incidents that were being proclaimed in the corporate media as proof that anti-Semitism is on the rise, and there were bomb threats into various Jewish centers, and there were some vandalized tombstones in Jewish cemeteries. Well, the bomb threats turned out to actually be a gentleman in St. Louis It was all a hoax, apparently to irk his former girlfriend or some such nonsense. He's been arrested. Now, over in Brooklyn, at the cemetery where some of these tombstones were knocked over on Jewish graves, the New York Police Department's Hate Crime Task Force has looked very carefully at the situation there, and they're saying what it was soil had eroded underneath the tombstones, and when they had some recent high winds from some of these winter storms coming on through, the tombstones simply blew over. There were no neo-Nazis, there were no anti-Semites. It was an act of nature. Now, this gets us back to North Carolina State Senator Jeff Jackson, who in a Rolling Stone story on February 28th blamed Donald Trump for the Jewish community bomb threats across and all this rising anti-Semitism. It's all Donald Trump. He's causing all of this. Well, now we know the phone calls were a hoax. The cemeteries was just wear and tear in the environment. Are we going to get an apology from Jeff Jackson to Donald Trump? Probably not. So far, complete, utter silence. Now let's turn to the economic news here, because Ron Paul is throwing his support behind the Arizona challenge to the Federal Reserve, where Arizona is considering legislation officially defining gold, silver, and other precious metals as legal tender. The Federal Reserve has their knickers in a twist over this one, because they cannot stand any competition to their currency that is loaned into circulation at interest, making you their debt slaves. And Arizona is now saying we're going to allow other forms of legal tender. And they have every right to do that, because if you look on the front of those pretty printed pieces of paper, it'll say right there, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. The word only does not appear there. There is no law that says this is the only money we're allowed to use inside the United States of America. You can conduct commerce with other people with any medium of exchange you both mutually agree to. Bitcoin, gold, silver, copper, piles of salt, pretty white shells, whatever. But of course, when you do use something other than the Federal Reserve note, the Federal Reserve loses money. They lose their control over you, and that's why Arizona is taking a stand on this. And apparently there's going to be a bunch of rallies, and Ron Paul is going to be there. And I hope he's wearing his Kevlar, because if you've read my article, All Wars Are Bankers' Wars, people who threaten that monopoly of currency created out of thin air and loaned into circulation, bad things happen to them. Andrew Jackson, Abraham Lincoln, John F. Kennedy. The private central bankers will do anything, blackmail anybody, kill anybody, start wars to maintain this scam with which they have looted and enslaved the human race for 300 years. Now, another story coming out of Sputnik News. European banks risk facing a collapse worse than the 2008 financial crisis. Why? Because nobody learned from the 2008 financial crisis, and they're back to this idea of we can just run the debt up and run the debt up, and somebody in the future will take care of it. We don't have to worry about it. But that's the trap of private central banking. I wrote another article about that called The 11th Marble, which is apparently one of the most copied and forwarded stories we ever wrote from this website. Deutsche Bank is looking at a meltdown. They went on out to try and raise almost £7 billion in new funding, and apparently the price of their stocks plunged. So they're in serious trouble, and part of that, of course, is Deutsche Bank's poor performance, and of course all these stories that are appearing in the media over the last several years about all the crimes and corruptions centered on Deutsche Bank. And all these mid-level Deutsche Bank officials who keep meeting with strange deaths. Now, you've been hearing a lot of China bashing in the economic media over the last several months here, but apparently the numbers are now in, and China has just unseated the Eurozone as the world's largest banking system. And it reveals China's increasing global influence, which of course is a threat to the Western banking system, and why, along with Russia, the U.S. is trying to make war with China over North Korea, the South China Sea, whatever it takes there, calling them bad names. The indications in this country are still very negative. Core factory orders growth slows to 6-month lows. In other words, factory orders for new products are in decline. People aren't buying new things at the end of the payment period or when the new improved model comes on out. People are hanging on to their appliances, their devices, as long as they possibly can, just because they don't really have the money to go on out and buy new stuff. I'm having to buy a new mixer today, but that's because this mixer is literally on death's door. Now, apparently, Macy's was looking at a possible merger with Hudson's Bay as a way of getting out of their financial difficulty, but as of last report, the talks of a merger have reached an impasse and are not expected to proceed any further. Meanwhile, China, Russia, and India are buying gold like crazy. They know that when all this paper, fiat, imaginary, fairy tale currency, debt-based currency stops working, hard money is going to be king of the universe. Now then, earlier today, Trump officials revealed the new travel ban. They've made several changes to it. They have tried to craft it so it's immune from legal challenges, which isn't going to stop the liberal Democrats from trying to tangle it up in court, get it over to that Ninth Circus Court of Appeals. And the new travel order leaves Iraq off the list, but still affects Iran, Syria, Somalia, Sudan, Yemen, and Libya. Current legal residents are exempt, but it will affect new applicants for visas coming on into the country. And already the liberal Democrats are whining, no, there's a God-given right for other people to come to this country whenever they want. Actually, there certainly is not such a thing in the Constitution of the United States of America. Now, because of Trump's crackdown on illegal immigrants in the United States, some are being deported back down across Mexico. Others are skedaddling to Canada. And Canada's border is seeing a surge in illegal immigrants crossing in from the U.S. And I love the way this story, which appeared in ABC News, put it on out there. These are among a growing number of asylum seekers and other migrants trekking on snow and ice to cross over the United States border into Canada. Make you feel sorry for them. Oh, they're struggling through the winter thing. The photo that illustrates the article, you can see the illegal immigrants are getting out of a taxi cab at the border. Meanwhile, up in Canada, students and parents are basically confirming refugee children, newly arrived refugee children, are choking and slapping their schoolmates, and it's being covered up. Canada's going the same way as Sweden. They're not going to admit there's a problem because they're trying to sell the idea that global immigration is beautiful and globalism is wonderful here. Now, over in New York, Mayor Bill de Blasio, on an interview with Russian television, said that they're hiding 500,000 illegals inside New York City, and he's going to ignore immigration laws. This puts him in violation of Title VIII, and that should put him in jail for 5 years for every single count. Now, 5 years times 500,000, that's a really long time in jail. Katie Hopkins is up there reporting in Sweden, saying that there are now 55 no-go zones in Sweden where emergency services cannot go without police escorts. And everybody in Sweden knows there's a problem, but there's an imposed silence from the political establishment. Now, Sweden's immigration minister made a claim on BBC that there is no rape crisis in Sweden. In fact, the number of rapes in Sweden has been going down and going down and going down. Actually, the official numbers from the Swedish government is showing that sex crimes are skyrocketing in Sweden. And they're just lying about it because they're trying to hide the fact that this push toward a new world order, global government, everyone blended together, is bringing with it a lot of culture clash problems. There was another article out there where women in Sweden right now are at more risk of being raped than women in Mosul. Story out of Breitbart. Islamists building a parallel society in Sweden aided by the PC culture of silence. Now, here in the United States of America, we've been talking about MS-13, gang violence, drug smuggling. The New York Police Commissioner, Timothy Sinai, is saying a lot of people will come across the border, they'll get legal status, then they're being recruited by MS-13. We're creating this seriously dangerous gang culture in our own society in the name of political correctness here. I have to I wonder about our colleges and universities and what their administrators are thinking. Apparently, over in Cornell University, students and faculty are demanding the college provide funding to illegal immigrants to get a college education here. But legal American students still have to take out those usurious student loans. The illegals are getting a better deal than our own kids are. And that is wrong. That is absolutely wrong. Now then, down in South Africa, and we saw this before in Zimbabwe, where these nations broke free of white rule apartheid, which is a good thing, but it led to a situation of discrimination in reverse. And we saw over in Zimbabwe where the white people were simply stripped of their wealth. And it didn't help anyway because Zimbabwe destroyed their economy. Now South Africa's president is openly calling for the confiscation of all white-owned land without compensation whatsoever. And when you listen to all these black activists screaming about slavery reparations, you have to understand it can happen here. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're now getting a story. Apparently, defrauded bank investors and civil activists have stormed Ukraine's cabinet of ministers in Kiev, demanding the immediate impeachment of Poroshenko. So Kiev may be in play over there. Now then, getting on back to political correctness in education. And apparently a survey is showing that 80% of Britain's university lecturers are ultra-left-wing. Well, certainly that's true here in the United States of America. And basically they're saying that universities are in Great Britain are at risk of developing a dysfunctional atmosphere and of practicing censorship because scholarship is now dominated with left-wing views. And we have exactly the same thing in this country. Now, recently here in the United States of America, they had the National Governors Association meeting. Do you want to know what was at the very top of their agenda? The very top. The most important thing to these governors of the 50 states is to have a system of indoctrinating 4-year-olds. Even kindergarten isn't good enough now. They want to start getting the kids 4 years old and putting them in a classroom to make sure they are taught to believe that our government is good and every other government is bad and the corporate media is what you should watch and the independent media is terrible and you should stay away from them. That's the top agenda item at the National Governors Association meeting, getting the kids even sooner to start brainwashing them. Anyway. Now, as you know, the other day we had a problem where Amazon Web Services basically had a goof and cut off a large part of the Internet. It even affected our server, and a lot of our readers were not able to get on in. They're claiming it all came down to a single typo. Somebody was trying to patch a running system, made a mistype, shut the whole thing down here. Wall Street Journal is now reporting that Amazon's outage cost companies in the Standard & Poor's 500 index roughly $150 million in lost business opportunities and communications. which is why you never patch a running system. You always have a development system that you do everything on, and then once it's tested and works there, then you put it in. Too many companies are not following that anymore. They just shoot from the hip. Apparently over in Great Britain, there is a scourge of extortionists that are targeting British webcam users. And it is an issue. I remember when webcams first came out, they came with a little shutter that you could lower on there, and they don't anymore, and I don't know why. Of course, you can put a piece of tape on there if you're doing anything in front of the webcam you ought not to be, but apparently, we're going to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3 here. And we're talking about porn blackmail, and the way it works is webcams are notoriously easy to hack into, and as I said before, the fact that modern webcams do not have a built-in privacy cover suggests it is intentional in order to allow law enforcement to peek into your home whenever they feel like it, which we now know they've been doing, but it also allows hackers of evil intent to access the webcams with malware. Then they'll get an image of somebody doing something embarrassing and blackmail them, saying, if you don't do X, Y, Z, I will make these go public. And apparently there was an English teenager who wound up committing suicide over this. And I guess the NSA is too busy spying on Donald Trump's campaign to actually do anything about all these cyber criminals. We're going to take a phone call here. Let's see. Nick in Southern California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. That webcam extortion?
Yes.
That was predicted by a show that you brought up. It's called Black Mirror.
Well, it's been a problem all along ever since webcams first surfaced. In fact, at one point there was a big stink because Google actually allowed you to craft a search string that would simply hunt for webcams. And they took that down because a lot of people were complaining that their webcams were being accessed. You know, people who live in a small apartment, they don't have any privacy in front of that webcam.
Well, the reason I even brought it up was there are 3 things that you've talked about on the show that were predicted by Black Mirror. There's this extortion of the webcam. There's a whole episode on it, and it literally is what you just described. We got you doing this. Now you have to go do these things. There's another one where the beads being replaced by electronic beads. That was on the newest season, and they used that for, surveillance as a secret. And the third is one that you brought up about a month or 2 ago, where they're going to start using social media to rate you and use those ratings, whether or not you get a job or not. And all 3 of those things are on the most recent season of Black Mirror. So I thought it was really interesting that show is so darkly prophetic.
Well, the problem with using social media to determine employment is the same thing that you have with using social media to gather intelligence. Everybody lies on social media. I mean, that's just absolutely what's out there. I wouldn't trust anything that was collected on somebody based on social media. Everybody lies on social media, especially if they're trying to get a hot date for the weekend.
Well, everybody lies on their resume too, but I suppose social media is even more dangerous. But that's all I had, Mike. I figured that Black Mirror being so predictive of these things that you talk about on the show, it makes you wonder who's writing that show, Black Mirror.
Well, I think anybody who's studied what's going on in this country is going to be able to sort of forecast forward and say this is how this stuff can be used for ill intent. And once you realize that there are a lot of people out there in the world of politics or corporations or religion who are bad people, you begin to understand how any new technology can be exploited for nefarious purposes. It's not that difficult to do. Okay?
Yeah, it kind of seems. I appreciate that, Mike. That's what I had, and thank you for your show and everything that you do.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Now, apparently, Gmail and Yahoo Mail accounts have been hacked yet again. Last week we were talking about this scam where you were getting an email that looks like it's from Gmail saying we need to validate and do, and it was a scam. And We knew it was a scam because Claire got one on her Android cell phone for a Gmail account, which to our knowledge, she does not actually have. Or if she's ever had it, she's never used it. But you need to check your security settings. You need to be changing your passwords all the time. And by the way, the last thing you should use is any of those online password saving systems. You've probably seen those websites, just all your passwords in one place. You can log in here from any device and all your passwords. What a wide open way to have all your passwords stolen. And it really is ridiculous. Now, there's been apparently another case where the Department of Justice was prosecuting a child porn case, and evidently the question of the chain of evidence came up. And the chain of evidence apparently involved this very classified piece of software the Department of Justice has that allows them to track you through Tor, which is supposed to be this onion browser to guarantee anonymity, and it doesn't. But rather than allow this code to be made public in a court of law, the Department of Justice dismissed the child porn case. And this is a very tricky one, because I'd like to see child porn cases prosecuted. But at the same time, this out-of-control government intrusion needs to stop. The problem is that under the last couple of administrations, we're seeing this surveillance state, instead of being targeted on those who are suspected of doing something wrong, it's simply being used to blanket surveillance everybody. And that is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. It absolutely is. All right, we're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Now, the vaccine manufacturers are in full bore right now. They're trying to force their agenda through. Right now, there are 134 vaccine bills introduced in 35 states, all of them calling for forced vaccinations. You will have these needles stuck into you. You are not allowed to refuse. What's in the needles? I don't know. How do you know it's not harmful? I don't. What about all the evidence the vaccines are harmful? Well, we don't care if they're harmful or not. It's the law. You must have them. All about the money. Article coming out of John Rappaport. He's talking about how every time there is actually a research report on dangerous medical drugs, the corporate media will ignore it. And we know why. Big pharmaceutical corporations have huge advertising budgets on which corporate media are dependent. By the way, did you know that the United States is only one of 3 industrialized nations that allows advertising for prescription medications on the media? Most of the other nations have banned it because of all the problems it creates. So you'll see an article about this drug is dangerous, and then it disappears. It's Orwellized. And months later, people are saying, did I really read that? I'm not sure anymore. And apparently there was a report by the Institute for Safe Medication Practices, and it calculated that in 2011, prescription drugs were associated with 2 to 4 million people in the United States experiencing serious, disabling, or fatal injuries, including 128,000 deaths. Meaning you are more likely to be killed by your doctor and its prescription medication than you are by a terrorist or a gun owner. But the story gets suppressed, even though this research article was derived from the FDA's own database of adverse medical drug events. So the FDA knows this is a problem. And what it amounts to is legalizing medical murder for the sake of a fast buck. Now let's talk about Fukushima, because that has definitely turned into the gift that keeps on giving. Many at Fukushima are now suffering brain damage. One of the workers at Fukushima trying to deal with this thing has developed 3 different types of cancer in a single year. And apparently the Japanese government has set up a special secret hospital for those who have been made sick by radiation exposure. They don't want the public to have access. They don't want the media to have access. They're basically taken away to someplace secret. And I'm sure that mostly it's just palliative care, taking care of the pain, because there's nothing that you can do for them. Now, there's actual list. TechnologyPals.com actually had a list on fatalities and injuries resulting from the Fukushima nuclear catastrophe. It's a very long list, and it's important to look at because now the government of Japan is trying to convince the Japanese people the problem is all gone, and it is now safe to move back into Fukushima and start manufacturing and growing food and supporting the tax base. Now, some of those fission isotopes do fade away very quickly, very short half-lives. Some of them do not. Some of those radioisotopes have half-lives measured in thousands and thousands of years. Now, over at NN News, they have an article about this strange illness that seems to be sweeping all over the U.S. West Coast for all kinds of sea life. This particular article is talking about sea lions and how they are simply dying of this yellow cancerous tissue all over their insides. They're dying at alarming rates. And they're calling it a mysterious cancer. But over in another article in the news, they're saying there's no mystery to this at all. The radiation pouring into the Pacific Ocean is starting to give cancer to the ocean life. Because at least 3 of those reactor cores have melted into the ground, they're undergoing spontaneous fission, and it's flowing into the ocean. They cannot stop it. It's an ugly, ugly situation. All right, we're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines now. 800-313-9443. And again, let's see here. The U.S. is ramping up the bombing campaign in Yemen to teach those people of Yemen you're not allowed to run your own country anymore. You will accept your U.S. puppet ruler here. And it's really getting... I'm seeing all the stuff pouring on in about Barack Obama. Story out of 12160. List of 78 laws Obama broke as president. I would emphasize that we know of. That we know of. More feedback on Loretta Lynch calling for blood and death in the streets. Former Bush Attorney General is saying that Trump is likely right about the surveillance. It does happen. It's going on here. And apparently Senator Grassley is launching an investigation into the FBI itself over its agreement to pay Christopher Steele. Now, Christopher Steele is the former British spy who cooked up this dossier about Donald Trump that was all over the media, and McCain gave it to the FBI and said, see, there's a link between Trump and Russia, and in it, it was claimed that Donald Trump and 2 prostitutes vandalized the presidential suite at the hotel in Moscow. And there's, again, nothing to support it. Complete fabrication. No evidence. It's simply Christopher Steele's assertion. And he was hired by a group of people who were funded by leftists, by Democrats, by liberals, to come up with this dodgy dossier to try and tarnish Trump with. And here's the really scandalous part. His agreement with his funders ended at a certain point, at which point the FBI came on in and said, we'll take over your paycheck. Now, knowing that this gentleman was producing unreliable information, to put it delicately and politely, it's a legitimate question for Senator Grassley to be asking, why is the FBI supporting this obvious propagandist disinformationalist? And again, I'm beginning to think that Donald Trump did err in keeping James Comey on as head of the FBI. Comey is clearly not his friend, especially with the revelation that Comey has gone to the Department of Justice to try and get them to reject the suggestion that Barack Obama was tapping Donald Trump's campaign, even though one of Obama's own staffers has now confirmed that. So, Sean Hannity is out there saying that the propaganda media is going all in on the Russian conspiracy theory. It's about all they've got left. They're trying to get us back to the Cold War. They're trying to revive McCarthyism. They're trying to say Donald Trump is a Russian stooge. He's the Moscow candidate. And they're pushing as hard as they can because, frankly, it is all that they've got. They have been trying to find dirt on Donald Trump ever since he announced his campaign. Remember when they were pushing this story about how Donald Trump's father was arrested at a KKK riot? Ooh, see, it proves he's a racist. He's this, he's that. And going back to the original story, first of all, it wasn't even clear that Trump's father was at the KKK riot. He just happened to be there and arrested, and he was immediately released, which means he hadn't done anything. And this happened 9 years before Donald Trump was even born. That's how desperate they were to try and find something on him. Remember when they were getting all these bimbos to come forward and say, oh, he's groped me, he did this, he did that. And that all fell apart. Remember when they had that Jane Doe that was trying to claim that Donald Trump had been on Jeff Epstein's island sexually molesting her? And they filed a lawsuit out in California. And that fell apart when it turned out that they couldn't actually prove that the plaintiff really existed. The address given for the plaintiff was a boarded-up house. The phone number given for the plaintiff was disconnected and had previously belonged to a dentist. And it fell apart. What did they do? Went to New Jersey and refiled the lawsuit there. Not because they were going to win, but because it gave the corporate media more grist for the mill. Oh, Trump is being sued for raping an underage girl. Now, at some point, of course, we get to this little media who cried Russia too many times. People are tuning out. The polling numbers are showing it. It just isn't working. They're not getting traction. But they've run out of anything else that they can use. Now, we're hearing from Christopher Ruddy. Apparently, he met with Donald Trump down at the Winter White House in Florida. And Ruddy is reporting Donald Trump is absolutely furious, and he ought to be. And as I've been saying before, Trump needs to stop being defensive on all these Russia things, and he needs to regain the initiative, and Obamagate is it. He has got to focus on this. He's got to push it as hard as he can. He's got to use his authority as President of the United States to get investigations going. And Trey Gowdy was absolutely right when he was on Fox News earlier today. All of the paperwork for all of this is now under the control of the Trump administration. See, here's where it's different than the Watergate scandal. Richard Nixon and his creep played dirty tricks, wiretapped people, slush fund, and all of that so that Nixon could win re-election. And they succeeded. They got rid of any Democrat who posed a real chance against Richard Nixon so that Nixon could run against George McGovern. And Nixon defeated George McGovern by one of the biggest landslides in U.S. history. And because Nixon had regained the White House, he had the power and authority to keep things covered up. The situation now is different. Those who were wiretapping, slush funding, lying, propaganda, bribe, all of that stuff, they lost their gamble. Hillary is not in that White House. And that means they don't have the authority of the White House to keep the lid on things. They've still got some players on the inside, like James Comey just demonstrated he is. But Trump needs to use this opportunity to regain the initiative, go on the warpath. This is his golden opportunity to reverse the trend, to push back on the deep state, on the corporate media, on Hillary's people, on all of these liberal Democrats, on all these New World Orderists who are conspiring together against the elected President of the United States of America. So if anyone from the Trump campaign or the White House is listening to me, and I assume there's one or two of you, this is the time when Trump needs to get manly-er. He needs to get angry. He needs to show leadership rather than business acumen. He's got the authority of the presidency. The law is on his side. He's got to use them. He's got to send a message. He's not going to sit there and play rope-a-dope anymore. going to have to really, really push. This is his opportunity. And because the corporate media is going to try and cover this up, it is up to us in the independent media to push this story forward as hard as we can. The battle is joined. The glove is up. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And obviously the liberal Democrats are in a total panic about Obamagate because they have not let up on my server for more than a few minutes during the entire course of our program. So, as the old saying goes, when you're catching flack, you know you're over the target. So we're catching a lot of flack right now. We're over the target. And we're going to keep on pounding that target just as hard and as long as we can. Because this is a new Watergate scandal. It's even worse than Watergate. I had a listener who wrote on in to correct me. Apparently, direct-to-consumer advertising of prescription medication is only allowed in 2 countries. The United States is one. New Zealand is the other. Every other country has prohibited it because of the abuses that resulted from it. We're going to take a phone call here. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Mike, a couple of things. One is, was I right about Comey or what?
Yes, you were right about Comey. You were right about Comey. He has shown his true colors by trying to intervene with the Department of Justice. I mean, if Obamagate, breaks into the court system, he's looking at obstruction of justice charge.
Absolutely. That's my next point. I think what President Trump needs to do, and he needs to work, of course, together with the Justice Department, and that is start taking the initiative. He has, first of all, I think he should indict Brennan, the former CIA head, Clapper, the DNI guy, and fire Comey and then indict him for, obstruction of justice, leaking information, illegal wiretaps. I think Comey was involved in that also. So he needs to do that. Once he gets these 3 clowns, I think they're going to start to sing. Once they start to sing, maybe we can really get Obama. Now, he's got enough to go after Hillary already.
Yes.
Not even hesitate. I mean, that should be par for the course. He's got enough to put her away probably for the rest of her life. But he needs to go after Obama now. This has gone too far. We cannot let this happen.
No, we cannot. We can't. And I would like to remind the Trump people listening to this show that one of the reasons we elected you into that office was to drain the swamp and to lock Hillary up. Because we all know what the Clintons and the Bushes and that corrupt machine are like. And one of your primary campaign promises was to clean that mess up. And you need to start doing it. And this is your golden opportunity. And again, if Jeff Sessions is forced to step down as Attorney General, I think they ought to put Trey Gowdy in there. And by the way, Representative Chaffetz is out there saying they're going to be looking hard at this wiretapping claim. As of the last word, Obama's current press secretary is saying, I don't remember anything about wiretaps one way or the other. So they're already starting to pull back to make sure that they can't be caught on anything that they're saying that could lead to eventual perjury. But again, remember, on Inauguration Day, January 20th, the New York Slimes, on the front page above the fold, ran a story saying that Trump's aides were being wiretapped. So, yeah, it's there.
I even remember when this all started, if they say it goes back to July. In July is the time that I've warned people about Glenn Beck time and time again. He was saying that Manafort, the guy who was in charge of Trump's campaign before,
yes,
that Manafort and Roger Stone were really Russian agents, that they were being paid by Russians, that they had connections to Russia. And this is what I personally don't know whether he got this information from his buddies in the CIA or whether he got it somehow else. He has a thing about, I don't know if you ever heard of Alexander Dugin. He keeps saying, Dugin is responsible for just about everything short of people having bad breath around the world,
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, that would be a guy I'd love you to have on as a guest. I mean, that would be great. Alex Jones had him on already. The guy is brilliant. He's Professor Dr. Alexander Dugin.
Yes.
Brilliant man. Anyway, but this has been obvious from the get-go that they were going to try this. with his Russian thing. Now, here's another thing I think Trump should
Now, hang on. Before you do that, and I'm going to have to take you to the commercial break. It's looking more and more like this whole idea of linking Trump to Russia may have originated with Obama himself, because all the lines of communication seem to spread out from that whole situation. And it's sort of like the old story about Lyndon Johnson accusing his opponent of sexual congress with barnyard animals. All right, well, listen, we've got to take a break for commercials. Mark, do not hang up. I'm coming back to you after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Mark in North Carolina. We're talking about Donald Trump having an opportunity to seize the initiative against this conspiracy by the corporate media, by the Hillary campaign, by the liberal Democrats, by George Soros, by the intelligence agencies to oust him because he is such an impediment to the goals of the New World Order. And, of course, more immediately, with a president who is not under control, there could be prosecutions for all the crimes that have been going on for the last 30 years here. In fact, Steve Bannon is out there saying he would not be surprised if by the end of Trump's first term we don't see multiple people from Obama's administration, if not he himself, in federal prison. And it's something that needs to be done. It needs to be done because for 30 years, this Bush-Clinton duocracy, this CIA cocaine cartel, has literally gotten away with murder. And it sets a bad example for our young people. It sets a bad example for the rest of the world. It's certainly not helping our image with the rest of the world to see this kind of chaos going on within our government and in our streets.
All right, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't even know that Bannon said that. That's right. When did he say that? Just today or yesterday?
Just coming out today.
Oh, that is great. That is awesome. The thing is, what I would do if I was Donald Trump right now is this. Like I said, I would get rid of Toomey, and then I would put Sheriff Clark in as the FBI director. I think he'd be excellent.
Comey has to go. Comey has to go. There's no question about that. I was wrong when I thought that maybe Comey, because Comey, during that press conference about Hillary's email scandal, he went out and listed the Title 18 violations she'd committed, then said, we're not going to press charges. And I thought the fact that he made a point of getting those charges onto the public record, but no, with him reportedly going to the Department of Justice to get them to not look at this wiretapping. Of course, again, this wiretapping involving the FBI definitely involved him as well. It's his neck on the chopping block if this thing gets investigated.
Now, as far as the next thing I would do if I was Donald Trump is this. I'd invite Vladimir Putin to the United States, and I'd go to a couple of rallies together with Putin. A lot of people in this country still seem to think, because of the fake news media, is that Russia is still a communist country. They're anything but. They're a very religious country, as a matter of fact, and Putin himself is a Eastern Orthodox Christian.
Yes.
A churchgoer at the same time. So people don't understand it. So they still think there's some kind of, like Stalin's in charge or something like that. You should go to rallies. A lot of us in the alternate media or the independent media know that's not true. But there are a lot of people, unfortunately, who still believe that. Now, the next thing you should do is then go to Russia and do the same thing. Have a couple of rallies. Let people understand that the United States and Russia has way more in common than we do with the European Union. The European Union, to me, is the new Soviet Union on steroids. They're in a lot of ways even worse because they're literally trying to destroy their own countries. They're literally just trying to destroy Europe for the New World Order. At least in the old Soviet Union, they weren't trying to destroy Russia. They really meant, I guess they meant some kind of well for it, but it didn't work very well. At least not towards the end. It did. But at least they tried.
I have an idea. I have a refinement on that first idea of yours. I don't think we need to tie up Putin and Trump in these rallies, which also, unfortunately, offer opportunities for assassination. When I was a kid, we used to have a program in school called Pen Pals, where you were trading addresses with people in other countries, and you'd write letters back and forth, and it was a way of growing awareness of other countries and other cultures, which I thought was a really good thing. Of course, the only the only postal addresses made available to us were in the friendly countries, Great Britain, France, and so forth and so on. But I think we need to start a campaign of encouraging we're hang just a second. I'm responding to a comment from our control room. I think the other issue here is that we just need to start a campaign encouraging everybody in America to simply track down somebody in Russia on social media and extend a personal contact and say, hi, I want to know what life is really like around you and what you think and what you do. Because I've had a lot of people... I have a lot of people in Russia who email me all the time. We have dialogues going all the time. And it absolutely puts the lie to all of this Russia bashing we're seeing in the corporate media. We need to get that started as a new fashion trend of Russian email buddies, Russian social media buddies, so we actually get to see the pictures and what their life is really like. And that will do far more to undermine the corporate media propaganda about Russia than Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin hitting the stage together.
Yeah, I have both Russian and Syrian friends on Facebook. And plus I get Syrian Republic on my Facebook also. And it puts a complete lie to the fact that Assad, the other guy, is a bad guy. And if you ever notice, these people who don't want us to get involved with Syria always have to put in a little aside. We know that Assad is a bad guy, but we know that Putin is a bad guy, but no, neither of them are bad guys. Both of them are trying to. One has already taken Russia and actually saved it, made it like, you could say Russia made Russia great again. The other is trying to save Syria from a bunch of Islamic terrorists that actually were supported by the West, by the United States and other parts of the West, of Saudi Arabia, Israel, and who knows who else. So people got to understand that. We are being lied to. That's why I say the fake media. That's what it really is. The whole so-called mainstream media, fake stream media, is nothing but lies. All you get out of it. You don't get anything else. You don't have real reporters. You don't have people that go to Syria and find out what's going on, like you do, like RT sends people there putting their lives on the line, find out what's really going on in Syria, what's really going on in Ukraine. You just don't have that. This country, the media is totally, should I say, not living up to what our founding fathers wanted the news media to be, or the news, at the time, the newspapers to be.
You're absolutely right about that. I mean, the reason, there was a little bit of a bargain. The reason the First Amendment guarantees right to freedom of speech and freedom of the press carried with it an obligation for the press to act as a watchdog on the abuses of government. And corporate media still likes to pretend that that's what their job is, but very obviously we can see with our own eyes that is not the case. They've become completely co-opted by the intelligence agencies. Literally, what the U.S. government has done has privatized the Ministry of Propaganda, and it's now called CNN, MSNBC, and so forth.
I was just, the other day I was at the gym, and Fox News is on there, working out, and they had some guy, I think his name was Mark Dubowitz, something like that. He's being interviewed by one of the, airheads, one of the airheads at Fox there, and he was giving his opinion about how terrible Syria is, how bad Iran is, how Russia is pushing all of this, and Russia's bad, this and that, blah, 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 blah. Nothing out of it. The reporter just went right along, didn't question him, just went along with it like it was fact.
Yes.
I looked up the guy later on. I looked him up, on my iPhone, and I found out this guy is your typical neocon. He belongs to some. Anytime you see something for democracy, usually anything but democracy, democratic.
Well, the corporate media is going to make a star of anybody who will support the agenda. They are pushing. There was that huge embarrassment where apparently I forget which of the news networks had it, but they had this guy who'd been on their network for years, claiming to be former CIA and an expert on all this stuff, and the guy turned out to be a complete phony and a fake, and they never checked him out because he was saying all the things they wanted to hear.
Oh yeah, I remember that. You know who I noticed is not on the media anymore, though I've seen him on YouTube the other day, is I forgot his name now. The guy has a real heavy-duty Midwest accent there. Sometimes doesn't exactly go along with the Zionist line about the Middle East and all that. He thinks we should stay out of it. I forget his name now. I think you probably know who I'm talking about.
No, it's not ringing a bell here.
Like,
anyway, listen.
Anyway,
listen, Mark, I'm going to let you go here because we got 3 more calls. We're running out of time on the show today. So let's switch over to Sherry in Texas. Aloha, Sherry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Listen, I think Trump is aware of the importance of timing as to when he should act on something and to stop these attacks. Stuff about Hillary. He had mentioned he wants to leave it to the authorities. But as to when he takes action, I think he'll be advised or he'll just say go. And, I think he's holding back. I think there's stuff he knows, but he's holding back until the right time. See, right now the media's been shooting itself in the foot a lot, and they're going to mess up on this Obama Gate thing, and it's really good for him to push on that. Now, there was a lady, I'm terrible with the names as usual, the justice that was interviewed, and she said that I don't have any information at this time, but President Obama is right to not say anything now so we can be free to do our job. Because this has to be an investigation.
Here's the problem. The FBI already found evidence of Hillary's Title 18 violations. They could just go on those and not investigate any further. The issue of timing, you are correct. Hillary can be put off into the distance a little bit. But there is absolutely no question that Trump needs to move on Obamagate and the wiretapping right now. And not give the corporate media time to pre-spin it against him, as they're already trying to do, and certainly not give Obama's holdovers in the government time to shred the available evidence.
Yeah. My personal feelings about Hillary, kind of like my own little thoughts on it, the significance of when someone's behind the 8 ball how did that expression come into play? Is it because it's the last ball you hit in a game of pool?
Well,
or something, the last one you try to pocket?
Well, basically the idea is if your cue ball is behind the 8 ball, it's hard to make a play because of the risk the 8 ball will go into a pocket without being the last ball and you will lose the game. So that's where that came from.
Okay, because I saw that 8 ball with Hillary, and I think they have to make sure they're doing the right thing, and that might mean doing a lot of prep work first or something. But I also, those paddles, those old paddles where the ball is tethered to the paddle, and I think it's called a paddle board, and every time you hit it, the ball comes back and you can hit it again.
Yes.
See, I see this around Hillary. I know this sounds weird, take it for whatever it's worth, but I don't think she's ever going to be free again. She may talk like she wants to run for mayor and all this, but it's just she's bouncing out there, and she's going to come back, and they're going to whack her again. So I think I don't see her married for a long time here either, and she just sort of symbolizes a faded flower to me.
Well, I don't think Hillary and Bill Clinton, in terms of their actual living arrangements, have been married for a very, very long time. We keep hearing that both of them are having jollies outside, but that's kind of irrelevant at this point. But Hillary is obsessed with power and any way to get it. Just like you can have people who are money junkies, you can have people who are power junkies, and the two very often overlap tremendously, which seems to definitely be the case here. But getting on back to the point here, last week I was saying Donald Trump has to stop being defensive and regain the initiative. Now he's got the chance to do it. And I strongly urge anybody from the White House who's listening to this program, you tell Trump he's got to get in the saddle and, kick the stirrups in and just start charging forward right now on this, because if he lets this sit, the corporate media will spin this against him. And scream that this is just a sign of Trump's desperation to distract from the Russia deal and a bunch of other nonsense. So he's got an opening here. He's got to seize this opportunity, or it's going to escape him.
And I think he knows that, and that may be why he didn't say much about some of the other things, too, or take action as quickly as some people would like. I think he was waiting for the time to be right, because this is a big one.
This is a big one.
This is a big opportunity.
I think the problem is that Trump has been defensive for his term in office so far, and he doesn't have the latitude to move forward on a lot of these agendas because the establishment keeps throwing all these mud balls at him. Now he's got a chance to break out and get in front, and he's got to seize it. It's a do-or-die situation here. If he does not seize this opportunity and move forward with it, then the establishment is going to get him back on the defensive, and they will bury him.
Well, the thing is, they're messing up, though, because, like, on PBS, when that justice made her statement, they completely cut off everything she said beyond, I don't have any information at this time. Bingo, she was off. Mm-hmm. And I thought, here they are, later on in the show, they're showing all these oldies but goodies and things that the older generation likes, baby boomers, and they're asking for our money to support the station. This is so ridiculous. It just shows you that America is not for the people right now. It's for profit, and they're asking for it, and yet they won't let this woman make a very important statement that this does need to be prosecuted and confirm that. They just cut her off when the PBS had their news hour.
PBS is just as controlled as CIA or NBC or MSNBC.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, if you're going to have the CIA's Operation Mockingbird take over control of all the TV news and all the news media and magazines, they're not going to leave one out there untouched that people are going to be drawn to because they still appear to be accurate. So, of course, PBS is compromised.
Yeah, it is, and it's sad because I like TV that doesn't have a bunch of commercials in it, but I can't, I used to in the past support it, but I just can't justify it when they cut her off like that. And if they didn't do that on NBC, they gave the whole statement. No. So they're even worse than the others,
Oh, so they don't hide the fact that they're liberal. They don't even hide the fact that they're liberal. Sherry, I'm going to let you go. We're running out of time. I'm going to start with Tom in Florida. Tom, I may have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Michael. First off, that lady, the last lady there, let her know when it's called scratchy. When you hit the 8 ball and the cue ball goes in, it's called the scratch. And if you want to be a good football player, you got to learn to do a lot of English. You need to learn how to use the English control the rock.
Yeah.
Anyway, getting back to what I want to talk about is Barry Soetoro, Hussein Obama, couldn't do what Donald Trump's done. In 1 week, they haven't had a murder or shooting in Chicago in 1 week's time in the city of Chicago, where Michelle Obama's from. That's number one. I do want to talk about this, Michael. It's very important. I don't know if you ever got to see the 1996 Cambridge speech of Barack Hussein Obama when he's speaking in Cambridge. Have you ever seen that video?
No, I haven't.
You have to actually see this video to believe it. It's at the Cambridge University talking about Frank, which was Frank Marshall Davis, probably the biggest communist in the United States in 1988.
Yeah, and Obama's real biological father. All right, Tom, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. Back with our last phone call and our last segment of the program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Last segment of our program this Monday. Patrick in Wisconsin, what is on your mind today?
Hello, I noticed, aloha, Michael. I noticed that you were talking about pen pals with Russia.
Yes.
And I have a website suggestion for everyone that would like to basically talk with Russian people. It's called conversationexchange.com. And there, it's basically learners of languages go there to basically swap languages. So you practice Russian if you want to learn Russian, and you help them with English.
Okay, I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it now, but it says native speakers living in your area. So this website would be finding people who speak Russian who live here in Hawaii. And by the way, most Russians speak very excellent English anyway, so I don't think that's as much of an issue.
Well, actually, I think there are many Russians who would like to become more proficient with their English language. And I've been on it for about 3 years now, and I've actually been to Russia as a consequence. Been invited over there by friends that I've made through that website.
Okay.
It's a very good read.
All right. Yeah. I'll go ahead and put it up there, and we'll people can come up. But you can find people in Russia just on social media. And again, I get a lot of email from people in Russia. They speak and write excellent English. And I remember when I got snowed in at the Frankfurt airport with that Aeroflot crew, they all spoke excellent English because English is still the language of international air travel. And most Europeans and Russians have much better language skills than Americans in terms of knowing more than one language.
Most Americans, though, don't want to learn languages.
No, they have that attitude. You should all learn our language, and now, of course, they're getting a taste of that same medicine from all the illegal immigrants streaming into this country saying, you should learn Spanish. We're here now, you should learn Spanish.
Yes. Well, I thought I would mention that to you. Thank you very much, sir. You have a good night.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We just put it on up there where people can find that. And again, social media, you can find people. All you have to do is just click the link that says you want to communicate with them directly. And just say, I'm an American citizen. I want to learn more about what Russians are really thinking and really doing because I don't trust the corporate media anymore to give us the straight dope on what's going on out there. All righty, let's see. Another story here. Apparently the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of New York is hampering the sexual abuse bill that is being debated by state lawmakers. Basically the bill would relax one of the nation's tightest laws of limitations or statute of limitations on filing criminal charges against sexual abusers. Right now, if you don't file them immediately, it's past the statute of limitations and the priests are off scot-free. The legislature wants to change that in light of how many victims have come forward only 10 or 20 years afterwards. And, of course, the Roman Catholic Archdiocese is saying, no, you can't do that. You pass that bill and you're going to go to the dark regions and you're going to burn for all eternity and the devils will stick pitchforks in you. And we won't like you on top of all of that as well. All righty, we're coming up here basically at the end of the show. There's the music. And I got to head on off and do Jim Goddard's show up there in Vancouver.